Well, welcome to the show today. And I want to ask you a couple questions. Do you struggle to get your teen to go to bed at a decent time? Or are they so overloaded with homework and activities that late nights seem unavoidable? Or are mornings, are they like a constant battle when it comes to trying to get them out of bed? And do you worry about them getting enough sleep or wonder what even is enough sleep for a tween or teen? Well, if you said yes, you're not alone because sleep deprivation is really a big issue today with our tweens and teens. And I am so excited to have Jessica Bryant here with us today. And she is a representative of the Better Sleep Council. She is internationally recognized pediatric sleep strategist. She is a keynote speaker and the founder of Sleep Happy Consulting. She's dedicated to answering the questions exhausted parents have about their kids' sleepless days and nights. And in a world that often prioritizes restless busyness, Jessica is a staunch advocate for placing rest at the forefront of family life. She firmly believes that well rested kids have the potential to make a profound impact on the world. Jessica is passionate about helping families prioritize rest and create calmer, more rested homes. So, Jessica, for being here. We need help. So, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this opportunity to talk to about this great age group.
Yeah, I felt tired as I was even reading that. It's like, it's so hard when when you have babies, right? Getting them on a schedule, but it even feels more difficult when you have a tween or a teenager and they're older
Mhm.
and you can't just lay them down in a crib. And
Right.
so, so what do you do? So we're going to be talking about that. But I am fascinated on hearing a little bit of your story and how did you get into sleep and being a sleep strategist and helping parents?
My background is in child development. I worked with the birth to three population with developmental delays when I graduated from college and inside the home and sitting on floors with families and learning from physical therapists, occupational therapists, interdisciplinary teams, anything that the parent needed to help them. And so that kind of started that interaction with supporting and lifting up parents. And fast forward to me starting my own family, and nobody talked about like actual sleep, like what it actually looked like. And it all comes down to this like one day I was so excited for adult contact and I walked down the street in our neighborhood to a neighborhood night out with my firstborn 5-month old and the other mom, which I always think moms that have older kids, I'm like, okay, they're a genius, they've been there, they're just ahead of me, they have so much knowledge. And she asked me how things were going, and I said I just can't figure out the like sleep thing. Like, how much is she supposed to sleep? I knew like toddler sleep and preschooler sleep, but like new baby 24 hours a day sleep, I didn't know. And the pediatrician was my only touch point. And she said, well, they can sleep 7 to 7. And I was like, what? And healthy? And being the person who had been a nanny and babysat for years and years, I was always testing things that I was learning in college on my on my clients, in a sense, babies. And I was like, oh, something to test out on my own child. So I ran home, I got the book she suggested, I followed the directions, and 3 days later, she was sleeping 7 to 7. And I was like, I just didn't know a tiny baby went to bed at 7 and then could wake up in a great mood at 7. And I will say, she was more of the textbook and she was more of a first baby, right? Like there's a lot less distractions. But then along came a set of twins.
Oh,
And if I was going to survive, they were going to get on the same schedule, not as quickly as her, but they did. And so then people started asking me questions at the playground and at play groups, and because they couldn't figure out why I was like, oh yeah, it's bedtime, bye, or it's nap time, bye. And they're like, you're so calm and chill. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, I'm sleeping. So it kind of started there, and I just helped friends of friends until I opened Sleep Happy in 2015.
Okay, and that's just kind of snowballed, and now it's just not babies, but also how do you get teenagers to go to
Yes,
bed when they're supposed to go to bed and get enough sleep?
because now I have twin 18-year-olds and a 21-year-old. So
Wow.
it just kind
Okay.
of goes along with it.
That is totally how you kind of, yeah, it changes, right? But it can still be a battle. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And I found it really difficult too when my kids started going out and driving.
Hmm.
Then I was staying up and I was waiting for them to get home, and then I couldn't sleep, and then I was so exhausted, and then you have an older or a younger kid that gets up early. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So it affects us too.
Sleep is an ongoing, I don't want to say struggle, but it is definitely something to be conscious of as we move through different stages of life. And I feel like everyone experiences it to a degree. So yeah, it's a great conversation.
Why is it so important for our tweens and teens?
Because they're still growing and developing. I feel like I sometimes forget how much brain development is happening from 11 to 17 because I do so much work with younger children, and because early development has been such a focus and we talk about it more. I think when our children start looking like man children, or they're taller than us, or all these things, we forget that they still need a bedtime and they still need our scaffolding to set them up for success and set them up for health. And I don't think there's a lot of information about that because parents today are bombarded with, oh, well, we've got to do this sport, or we've got to learn this skill, or we've got to have this fine arts, this instrument. Um, and so we're forgetting that, yes, we're offering all these social interactions and these intellectual interactions, and we're expecting this kind of attitude or this kind of performance on very little sleep because we're either letting the child decide, or we're letting homework or sports schedules or music schedules decide when they're going to bed. And children still need our help with that. So I think society also, they know that 50% of children 6 to 17 are not getting the minimum amount of sleep that their brain needs to fully develop. But what are we doing about it? I mean, there's so much more research today, but I feel like we're missing the boat with how the messaging on how we help parents understand the importance. I mean, even myself, who went to a 17-year-old checkup with my child, and you get this book, right? You get this book from the pediatrician of all these things: sexual health, safety, all these driving, like wearing a helmet, wearing sunscreen, right? At the very bottom on mine, it said, get enough sleep.
That was it?
That was it. Did it tell the parent how many hours? No. And I'm like, oh, but sunscreen's more important? The helmet? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's such an illustration of our times today.
Yeah. It seems like all of a sudden I'm seeing a little bit more about the importance of sleep
Hmm.
and how it's affecting us. But just now, I feel like, because you're exactly right. And that's why I put it in my little intro, like, well, how much is enough? And you think
Hmm.
about if you have a kid that's really active or playing a sport, does that change it? Or, how do you gauge that? So you did say that you're going to give us a little handout where we can look at how many hours our kids
Yes.
need at different ages. But how many hours does a 13-year-old need?
According to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, which is also backed by the American Academy of Pediatricians, it's 8 to 10 hours for 13 to 18-year-olds. Which I would say there's plenty of us that have seen that age range sleep more than that. So I don't want you to go rushing in and wake up your at the 10 o'clock at the 10-hour mark. And then for our tweens, 11 to 12, 11 to 13, it's 9 to 12 hours. Whereas adults, the recommendation is 7 to 9 hours.
Why do you think that we undervalue sleep so much?
I think it's because, on one hand, I think people think it's just natural. It just happens. Like it just happens however much you need. Everybody's different. And they don't realize that the amount of sleep that your brain needs a night to kind of download, to clean out, I think there's just too many things in our heads and in front of our faces constantly all day long that are more engaging in a sense than sleep. It's that badge of busy. Like you're not being a good mom if you haven't exposed your kid to a million things, and that pressure to have find their one thing. And then for them, at least in my area where I live, it's the get really good at that one thing. So we have to play, we have to make this team, or we have to make this concert choir or whatever. And so then we need 4 hours of practice on that every day. I think we've lost the whole like just downtime in a sense of my kid's hanging out and he's, you know, reading or drawing or playing basketball around the corner with some friends, or riding bikes. We're structuring everything. And so sleep falling under the unstructured falls under lazy.
Well, and it's interesting. I had one podcast earlier before you today, and it was all about creating connection with your kids and with your teens. And she was saying, how we value, it's to your point, we're valuing other things, and sleep is just okay, but grades are more important. Or I don't know, we'll catch up. Or I think there's a lot of things that can steal away our attention from sleep. And not really understanding the cost. So let's
Mhm,
talk about that because
mhm,
there's been studies that have been done. I know with like adults, if we are sleep deprived, it's like we're driving drunk. And I've heard that. I don't know how sleep deprived you have to be like that, but I certainly know it affects me when I'm tired. What are the signs in the teenagers and how is it impacting them? You mentioned the brain.
Yes. So signs of sleep deprivation in teenagers, much like adults, irritability, short-tempered, impatient, and the brains of tweens and teens are going to be impulsive already, right? Because their brains are still developing. They haven't connected all these things, and they haven't had the life experience to know it's impulsive a lot of times. So you're going to see the impulsivity, and older kids falling asleep in class or right when they get home from school, having a hard time like doing easy tasks, chores, homework, taking a long time. You can sometimes see it that they're more anxious with peers. I feel like with girls, sometimes when you aren't getting enough sleep, it's almost like a little bit of paranoia. Like you're more worried about like what did they say about me, or what did that funny look that person gave me mean, and you start going inward, and just more anxiety and depression. And like you mentioned, driving. We're training children how to drive at 15 and then setting them out on their own. Do you know how the leading cause of car accidents? Fatigue, sleep.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a massive, massive time of brain development. And so much of the connections between, some researchers will call it the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain, like in the center, the cortex, the amygdala, all of those things, the the limbic system, the emotional system being tied to the reasoning system, and just all these building all of these connections is done at rest and is done at night. And I think
Oh, wow.
another very specific thing that I didn't realize the impact was sleep apnea. And I think a really good question that I've learned is asking your teen, you might have a conversation about sleep, but have you ever asked your teen if they sleep all night long? Like, do they wake up in the middle of the night for a little bit? Because a red flag is if they are waking up every 45 minutes or every hour, because that's broken sleep. And so good sleep for adults and teens is uninterrupted, so you're not waking up between sleep cycles, silent, so you're not snoring or making noise, mouth closed, passing through all your cycles of sleep multiple times for the recommended amount for your age, and waking up in the morning feeling refreshed and energized.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, should they not be waking up at all in the night?
Waking up is going to happen. So, I mean, I wake up and I have to go to the bathroom occasionally, not every night. Waking up and rolling over and getting comfortable, that's normal. But if you're waking up multiple times a night consistently, or you're waking up sleeping less than 5 hours a night, that's a red flag. Um, so waking up every multiple times a night and struggling to go back to sleep. If it happens more than once a night, if it's happening every night or it's happening multiple times a week, that would be good information to jot down and reflect on. But yes, I don't want to stick with that myth that sleeping through the night is never waking up. Occasional wake ups is fine. You occasionally have to go to the bathroom, or you're hot, or you roll over and you fall back asleep pretty quickly. That is okay.
And so, most of what's happening in their brains is happening during the rest.
Mhm, mhm,
It's like rest and recovery. So,
mhm.
if they're not getting that, then what are the signs of sleep deprivation? Like, what should we be looking for?
I would reflect on how much total sleep that they're getting, like asking them. Children who can't wake up in the morning, that's a good, good clue. Um, Napping, I'm not saying napping is bad. It's just napping is that signal, especially if it's, like 3 hours in the afternoon, that when they get home from school, that can be counteracting their night sleep. If it's occasional naps, fine. And I kind of want to say sometimes, teenagers get a bad rap. They're rebellious and they're irritable and they succumb to peer pressure. And I want to say, what if they were getting good sleep? Are they more enjoyable? Because I think a lot of the rap that we give teenagers for their development in their age range could be due to not getting enough sleep.
Wow, what if you it was so much of it is because our kids are sleep deprived. I mean, seriously.
The researchers will tell you, there's one magic pill. Do you know what the magic pill for being able to find joy and having better relationships and having better focus and having better health and immunity and even beauty, it's true, beauty, rest, less wrinkles, it's sleep, and that's free in a sense. It's like, before we sign up for everything else, can we just build the foundation? It is an essential need for all humans, and
Yes.
have to plan for it. Like, we have to.
Yeah. And we feel so much better. I mean, when I am sleep deprived, I don't have a lot of patience. I don't have a I feel like I have a lot of bandwidth. My brain doesn't work as well. I
Mhm,
feel like I have brain fog. And I mean, it's to really think about how important it is. It's
mhm.
Yeah, it's I feel like that is convicting, and that's going to help us as parents to be more intentional, or even ask our kids, how they're feeling
Mhm.
when they don't get sleep, to help them to, say, because I remember one time my daughter coming down and she was really tired and she had stayed up late working on something. And I said, "How are you feeling?" And she said, "I didn't get enough sleep, or I'm feeling really tired." And I said, "You did stay up late." And I made some connection to lack of sleep in a good way and not a
Mhm.
judgmental way. And she's like, "I realize I have to get more sleep because I don't like how I feel." And that was
I
so good.
love that.
Yeah, because
Yes.
from her, it
Mhm.
wasn't me saying, "You need to get more sleep."
Right, and that autonomy to advocate for her own body and really how does it feel? And I think that's a great opener for parents. Don't go in with, well, I listened to this podcast and this sleep strategist said this. Don't no. Just wonder, how are you feeling today? Um, how does your body feel? Or, I can tell you're really tired because you've been working on that math, or I'm wondering if you are tired because it's taking you like 3 hours to take out the trash, and it usually takes you like a minute. Just kind of those kind of conversations where even though you're frustrated at a parent as a parent, and even though if they would do so much better if they just did X, Y, or Z. I always tell my preschool moms, put the milk in the cabinet and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired today. I don't even know where the milk goes. I drove through a stop sign today. Oh my gosh, things like that that are just very practical, and let these smart, intelligent kiddos like reflect on that. And then you can say, can you believe that I need to sleep, 10 hours? Or, so and LeBron James, did you know he sleeps like 12 hours a night and takes 3-hour naps,
Yeah. I
those.
love that. Yeah, I've recently read that about athletes and how important sleep is, how much
Mhm.
sleep.
Tom Brady, huge sleeper. I was at a pediatric neurologist appointment with my daughter, and he was telling me, and this was probably about 5 years ago, and he said, I have so many patients whose children have seizures or anxiety and all of these things. And I cannot get the parents to redo the bedtime schedule to get their kids more sleep, with which these children have medical diagnoses that need the sleep. And he's like, I've hired an additional like behavior specialist with my practice to try to step by step go through with these parents how to change their routines at night so that they're setting their children and teenagers up for a full night of rest.
So I want to ask you a few questions um, that mom submitted. Okay. And here, how would you answer them? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, how can I help my teen fix her sleep schedule? Winter break threw her off, and now she's struggling, falling asleep in class, napping at odd times, waking up in the middle of the night. I've tried talking to her about healthy habits and even sleep aids. She listed some of them, like melatonin. She even got her a sleeping pill. I was like, "Ooh, I don't know. I wonder what you think about that." But anyway, but nothing seems to work. She has
Mhm.
ADD, so that might be a factor. I'm frustrated and unsure how to support her.
Great question. So first, I would start with, what was her sleep schedule that she was keeping over break? Was she going to bed at 1 a.m. and getting up at 12 p.m.? What did the sleep look like over break that isn't conducive now with school back being in session, or whatever her schedule is, and start there. Like, where was she going to sleep? And then when was she naturally waking up? For example, if you're sleeping from 2 a.m. to 2 p.m., that can be really hard to kind of, it's not doable, but we have to think strategically about it, because you can't say, okay, you woke up at 7 a.m. for school today, but the last 2 weeks you've been sleeping 2 to 2. So looking at that and then slowly backing it up. like talk to her about, okay, you went to bed at 2 a.m., you feel like this today, and looking at how you were sleeping during the break, you were getting 10 hours and you were waking up naturally. So let's use that data as our goal. So we need to try to get you 10 hours and you have to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that means you need to be going to bed at 9. Okay, well, if you've been going to bed at 2 a.m., you can't just one day go to bed at 9. Like that's not going to work with a teenager. It's not going to work for anyone. So I would come up with a plan and have her, I don't know the age of this child, but slowly back it up. So if tonight she's going to go to bed at 12:30 or 1, okay, now talk to her about when is she going to start the bedtime routine. When is she going to start winding down? When is she going to put any screens that she uses to bed? When is she going to take a shower if she does that? When is she going to lower the lights, and just planning a little bit more extra wind down time. And so if she has ADD, there is probably specific things that she's learned that help her specific unique body kind of calm and prepare for sleep, because the brain needs a signal. That's why it's not going to work all of a sudden to just up at 9 o'clock at one day. The brain's going to be like, what? No. So move the needle, and then over a couple of days, move it back. And then be very conscious of the naps. Because if she, like the mom said, if she's napping from 4 to 6 in the afternoon or something, that's probably what's causing her to, wake up in the middle of the night. So keep the naps short, like 30-minute naps, or try to stay awake. But if that's not possible, just cut the naps down to 30 minutes and try to be mindful of that. And then on the weekend, don't go back to the 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. situation. I mean, you can adjust it a little bit. I mean, ideally for your brain to really get back on track, you need to give it a week or two of being consistent with the same wake ups and the same bedtimes, and getting her up at 7 and going out into the light. Even if you just walk out on a porch or your backyard, sunlight, or turn on every light in the whole house so that your eyes are starting the day, because your sleep starts when you get up and you put light in your eyes, because your circadian rhythm gets going. So if she couples that with, you just have to get out of bed and stand up and go stand outside. You don't have to talk to me. I know how hard it is to get teens up. That will help her move. But don't expect her to just one day go from going to bed at 2 a.m. to being able to go to bed at 10:30 or whatever. You got to back it up slower, and keep that morning wake time. And one tip that I will say, the way I look at sleep is, when do you need to be up in the morning? Like that's where I start to figure it out. I reverse engineer it. Whoever you are, what time do they have to be at the bus? What time do they have to be at practice? What time do they have to get up in order to eat, dress? How much time do they need in the morning? And then you go to the chart that says you need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And then you back it up and you find, that's my ideal bedtime. Okay, now let's create a plan to test that out, to see what my body needs. Does my body need 8 hours? Does my body need 11 hours? Does my body need 9 hours? To just kind of figure it out and help your child learn how, just like you did with your daughter. She learned that with X amount of sleep, she didn't feel so good. She felt kind of jet laggy, like you just have that. So if you have 8 hours of sleep, how do you feel versus you have 6 hours?
I like that. Yeah, having them tap in, like, do you notice if you feel better if you've had 8 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours? How do you feel?
And for some kids, that may take a while. They're not going to instantly be able to tell the difference. But I would say one of the key pieces, since she mentioned ADD, is what does she need to wind down. And if she doesn't know, that might be something to spend some time on, either getting some expert to kind of weigh in on it or trying different things. ADHD, ADD, depression, it does impact that calming for sleep period. And sometimes children need different support in that area.
All right, that's great to know. Okay, next question. How can I help my 14-year-old get more sleep? They go to bed at 9:30, they read until 10, no phone allowed in their room, but often don't fall asleep until 11 or 11:30. They wake up at 6:30 on school days, and we agree to maintain a healthy sleep routine by waking them at 9:30 on weekends. Despite this, they still struggle to fall asleep earlier and get annoyed if the rest of the household is asleep before they are. How can I help them fall asleep faster and get more rest?
I love this mom's question because she is very educated on sleep because she points out several different things. So I think what's happening here, if she, because it sounds like she has the data of what she's been trying, is that sleep onset is coming for that child between 11 and 11:30, which is a lot, which is normal once you kind of hit puberty. The melatonin release is a lot later in our teenagers, and that can be a real challenge when we have school times or we start school practice or anything else, at 7:30. My daughter that struggles with ADHD and definitely takes a while to fall asleep. Her perfect I'm like, in college it'll be much better. Don't get any classes before 11 a.m. if you can help it, because she'll sleep enough if she can sleep later in the day. So I might suggest, if she has the data, like she said, that the child is taking an hour and a half to 2 hours to fall asleep,
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of counteracting the brain, because if you're laying there in bed a long time, well, she said 9:30 to 10 they read, so more like an hour and a half. Um, I think I would test out maybe having them go to bed at 10 and read to 10:30, and to see if that changes anything and they fall asleep faster. I would make any note of any caffeine late in the afternoon, any activity like high energy working out. Do they have, soccer practice that ends at 9? Anything like that that could be like waking up the system and contributing to how long it takes the body to then calm down and prepare for sleep. And then I would ask her if waking at 9:30 on the weekends, if that changes anything. Are they still able to go to sleep at the 11 to 11:30? And if they are, that's fine. But if they are struggling to fall asleep, like say on a Sunday night because they slept till 9:30 in the morning, then I might suggest maybe waking them up, testing 9, 8:30 or 9, until they see if they can improve the bedtime. And it sounds like they're able to fall asleep just fine with the because 3 hours later on a Saturday is a big chunk. So that's a tricky one for sure.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're saying to try and let her go to bed at 10 and then read till 10:30 and see if that helps, is one of the things that she can do.
Yes, because it's really hard to move the needle when that's her sleep onset. That's when her body is releasing the hormones that tell the circadian rhythm it's time for sleep. So I was trying to limit the amount of time she's laying there in the dark, rolling over, getting frustrated, because that can really take a toll. So that's why I was suggesting maybe starting a little later and just test it out. And yeah, I don't know how old this child is, and I don't love 10 o'clock bedtimes, but I hate how long it's taking her to fall asleep. but I do like just the calming period. Like even if she's up in her room at 9:30, but maybe the lights are still on and she's hanging out in there and she doesn't have her screens and all of those things. You could do some stretching, you could do some muscle tensing activities, but it sounds like if she's sleeping good, I think it just really stands out that it's more of a body chemistry thing at the 11:30 than it is the parent having a boundary or a routine, because it sounds like her routine is great. But, and I would say testing out the 10 o'clock bedtime, not to keep it there, but to just see if it changes anything, if she falls asleep faster, even though it's still late.
So changing it up, working with different things, being open to trying
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's really helpful. So when should phones go away? That's a real issue. I know I have an issue with that too. And that affects me. So is it an hour before bed? Is it 2 hours? What do you recommend?
I mean, 2 hours would be fantastic. When you think of how hard it, I think of how hard it is with me and my phone to put it down. How can I expect a 15-year-old to put it down or a third, So I think the more rules or boundaries you have about that, putting the phone to bed or putting it downstairs at X time, um, the more helpful it is, because I found that my boy used his phone differently than my girls and seemed to be able to put it down more. That his, and I don't know that that's boy and girl or personality, but I only have two girls and one boy to compare to. Um, but I would say in a perfect world, 2 hours, because then you've got the connection, you've got them exploring other things. And I think in today's world, our nervous system is taking in so much. And for children, they're growing and developing and going through massive rewiring of the brain. It can only do good things, that they have a break. I mean, watch TV, but if it's a little screen like this, or it's the iPad like this, and I would definitely say use a regular alarm clock.
Yes, yes, I know that I think more parents are starting to go to that. Yep.
And if you want to do the sunrise one, I do recommend it. And then I will say another thing, don't let them set multiple alarms,
Really? Why not?
because it confuses the brain. Because it basically teaches the brain every time you hear that sound, just go back to sleep. And on top of that, then you're going back to sleep for 10 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever, and you're starting another sleep cycle and you're in the midst of that. And then you get the alarm again and you're even more tired. And so it just, oh, you just feel gross when you get up with multiple alarms. So if your child's been using multiple alarms, my recommendation would be to take that option away, have them stop doing that with their phone or their alarm system or whatever, and just wake them up manually, which I'm all about teenagers getting themselves up. So I don't mean to backtrack on that, but just take it away so you can reprogram the brain. Like wake them up yourself, open the windows, turn on the lights, if talk to them or don't talk to them. However your specific child wants to be woken up, use light, but don't do the alarm, and just let them go off the alarm for a week or two and then reintroduce the alarm and only set it once.
Okay, so what if you have an alarm and they're not waking up right when the alarm goes off, and then you're going in and then you're having to turn on the light, wake them up? Is that okay?
That's okay. That's okay. Um, if that's already your plan, it's just going off once. And I know there was a question on your Instagram about I can't get my child up in the morning. That tells me that he's exhausted and his bedtime, he didn't get enough sleep that night, because you should wake up naturally. before your alarm. Not necessarily a teenager, because like we just discussed in the example, her onset in her body chemistry is coming around 11. So she probably would wake up at 9 or 10 on her own versus 6:30 a.m. But if you are going to bed earlier and getting enough sleep at going to bed at 10:30, for this other child question, and waking up at 6:30, that would be 8 hours. And if you were waking up easily at 6:30, that would tell you, okay, I'm good with 8 hours. If I get a little
Oh,
extra on the weekend, great.
wow. This has been so helpful. I felt like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I wanna get in bed tonight. It's so motivating on time and get a good night's sleep because it's so important. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah.
And for you, even a rest in the middle of the day for 30 minutes, even if you don't go to sleep, but maybe you just lay down in a calm, quiet place, maybe you put on an eye mask, maybe you listen to relaxing music, or maybe you listen to nothing. There's so much research in that break during the day that then if you're already tired, that then will help you sleep better the next night. So you could test that out. If you fall asleep, you want to keep it short, 30 minutes or so.
Jessica, you're just a wealth of information around this, and people can reach out to you, let them know where they can find you to email you about this, because I know you're going to get probably a lot of emails from our listeners. And we didn't even get to touch on the sleep apnea. So I probably need to email you myself and talk to you about that, because when you said that if they snore, that's something that you need to be aware of.
Snoring or sleeping with their mouth open.
Okay. And you tell the doctor that?
Yes, yes. I would tell the pediatrician, I would tell your dentist. Not all dentists are airway dentists, excuse me, but there's a variety. There's speech therapists that specialize, myofunctional speech therapists. Some chiropractors have information about it. But yes, whoever is your health provider, pediatrician, if you notice your child is mouth breathing, I would keep a little log. If it's not just when they're congested, or an ENT, also another option, but keep a little log so you have the data to kind of share. I noticed this, or we went on vacation and oh my goodness, my child snores like a freight train, and this is what it was like. But definitely check into that if it is happening at night.
All right. That's very helpful too. To any of you out there that have kids that are snoring. So, yeah, yeah, very good to know. So tell them, Jessica, where to find you.
Yes. So the Better Sleep Council has lots of research on teens and sleep. So you can find resources there, in addition to another thing we didn't touch on is the sleep environment. And when do you know when you need to replace a mattress and other things within the sleep environment? And the Better Sleep Council is a great resource for that. And you can find them at bettersleepcouncil.org. And you can find me at Sleep Happy on Instagram, and also sleephappyconsulting.com. I also have on my site, and I will send you the link for my bedtime chart, and that can help you like troubleshoot, and you can use that as a guide to kind of figure out what the ideal bedtime is for anyone in your family, whether it's grandma or the 2-year-old. So I'll also leave a link for that if your listeners would like to access that for
Yes,
free.
I will have it in the show notes as well. So go to the show notes and you can download it there as well. So thank you, Jessica, so much. This has been so helpful. I've had some sleep people on, and I have learned so much from talking. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. This was fun. I can talk about it all day long.